Return to Innistrad during a time of regrowth and changing power dynamics in a story arc that will continue across multiple sets. How is MTG story going to do justice to such a well-established plane, and can its narrative ride the line between spectacle and relatable narratives? Okay, you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Oh God, I'm gonna die.
Are you ready to go?
Yeah. I'm good.
Amazing.
Okay. Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the fuck.
Winning.
Oh, come on. We can do it. All right. Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things Magic flavour design and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And I'm so hungover. Oh my gosh.
This is amazing. I feel like it's normally the other way around, where I'm usually the bleary-eyed, like, struggling to human. And today I'm like, where are the beans? There aren't any, because I've got all of them.
You stole them from me.
I stole all the beans.
Oh, blimey.
Oh,
yes.
Well, welcome to the human race, Andy, man. It's a bleak and horrible time, the human race. It's actually, this works quite nicely, right? Because this is almost like paralleling the story of Innistrad, of how the humans feel. Everything's bleak, everything's hard, everything sucks.
Yeah. I'll tell you what doesn't suck. And that is the Innistrad Midnight Hunt story episodes.
True.
Which were rad. Absolutely fantastic. Today we are reviewing... as far as we review anything, really, we're going to have a general chit-chat about the, episodes 1 through 5 of Innistrad Midnight Hunt, of the web fiction. The author, K. Arsenal Rivera, did all 5 stories, and, brilliant. They're a massive Magic player as well, which absolutely helps. And I think it shows through these stories, no?
Yeah, I mean, apparently they've even got a magic tattoo when they got their first novel. They were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get a tattoo." So I like that kind of that gung ho aspect. It's really cool to get a new storyteller because you can kind of tell immediately. I remember because I do this thing where I read all these stories and then I look back. I'm a Reddit shill, I can't help it. Yeah. So I read back through all of the talk about each episode as each episode comes out, and there was a lot of discourse about like the writing style. And how it feels much more grounded. There are, and as we'll get into at the end, there might be some, say, like, the typical normal Magic pacing issues kind of thing. But I think the writing style was really nice, really evocative. It had a really nice gait to it. Like, can't sing its praises enough.
Yeah, I mean, people who listen to this podcast enough will know that one of my biggest gripes with Magic, like sort of language, if you like when people are telling stories, and indeed it's in all fantasy, is when things sound like too colloquial. Like I am somewhat a fan of like heightened language, especially if you're dealing in like fantasy literature. But whilst you can describe this as being like heightened language, at no point did I feel like the characters sounded like they were just your like mate down the pub kind of thing, which is what I don't like. The balance was really well struck with the writing, and again, I just think it shows that when the author's a massive fan of Magic the Gathering and is excited to write these stories and write these characters, that they A, know what to focus on, and B, pay lip service to the kind of things that they should be paying lip service to as well. I
was gonna say, it kind of helps when you're kind of invested in the game to kind of, because I do this, you've probably done this as well, like throughout the years, like you kind of create your own like headcanon of kind of like what the characters would be doing or wouldn't be doing outside of the stories we see them in. So it's kind of nice that this person probably has already done the same kind of idea. So they really have in their mind who they want to see Kaya being, who they want to see Arlen being, how they want the plane to be handled, how they want to voice the characters. And that I think very much shows like there's a very deliberate tone to each of the characters. I think is true to, it's a good homage to like what we've seen before. It also sets a good precedence for going forwards.
Yeah, 100%. You've done the story breakdown this time.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Doing story breakdowns, I thought, oh, this will be fine. Yeah, I'll just write it up. It sucks because it's a lot to break down. It's a lot to condense. I got about halfway through story 3 before my hands just went, dude, just like do blow by blow. Yeah.
Werewolf, vampire.
Yeah, like werewolf, attack, this happened, done. That was 600 words condensed down into one sentence.
Yeah.
So you'll kind of see I start off a little bit more verbose at the beginning, and then I kind of just cut to the important bits at the end, which I think is kind of how it works anyway, right? Like preamble, your setup, your world building tends to be quite long and protracted, and then when you get to the action, it's quite easy when you're doing a synopsis. Just go, X and X person fight, and that might be like 6-7 paragraphs, but for our intents and purposes, as much as we'll talk about the language used and how like how the individual bits of text kind of play into it. For the most part, you can kind of skirt over those bits and go, yeah, this is the person who won. Don't worry about the rest of it. Whereas at the beginning,
that was the running joke of the Kaldheim stories was, oh yeah, Kaya goes to this new realm and fights someone. Then she goes to this realm and she fights someone.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas this, it's a little harder to condense quite so much because there are a lot of little bits going on. We see a lot of different people as well, a lot of different voices, which I think is really, really important for when you only have 5 stories. If you're going to get a full, like, big point, I'm going to say this straight off, is that Gatewatch take a backseat to our Innistrad protagonists, which is so good. They're still there, but I think it's handled appropriately.
Really well,
yeah, exactly. So yeah,
cool.
Yeah,
all right, we'll dive in, mate, and then we'll have a little chat about what we liked.
Yeah, right. I've got a big old cup of tea here, so this is going to be a lot of words. All right, one sec. So we begin following Klaus the vampire hunting humans through Kessig before the moon changes, and they reversey Percy on him. Basically, the idea being that we think Klaus is facing these humans. These humans look all pitiful, look all sad, look like really, really scared. And then as the moon comes out, they change. It turns out, these aren't normal humans. These are werewolves. And they then turn and attack Klaus with a simple line, "The night belongs to those who take it." The reason I say this is because I think this kind of sets the precedence for the rest of the set and the story as a whole. And the kind of theme, like the idea is the night belongs to those who take it, be it, the vampires or the werewolves. I also like the fact it kind of starts with a vampire, but then it starts with a vampire thinking, this is a werewolf set, and then switches to the werewolves taking dominance. Fantastic. Great. When we begin the story proper, we follow our protagonist Arlen Cord, ruminating on the colder days, the darker nights, watching over Innistrad in the wake of the Travails. The Travails are the events of Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon. As is usually the case on Innistrad, we're at the scene of a murder, the work of the late Klaus. Arlen talks to Agatha, who lives in the village. We see how desperate and bleak the outlook for humans is in the wake of the encroaching night, but she mentions of a witch rallying the humans, and Arlen asks to know more of her. We then flash back to Arlen's past, following her and her pack on the hunt of a white stag. Her pack, Streak, Redtooth, Patience, and Boulder, these are the 4 wolves that are in her pack. They and Arlen track it down to the corner, into a corner, but Arlen lets the white stag go. A simple quote of, "Sometimes just laying your eyes on something is gift enough." Come morning, however, the following morning after that hunt, there's a skull sitting atop a sword next to where they lay, scraps of white pelt still attached, a message from Tovolar that he doesn't tolerate her softer ways. Wherever he is and whatever he's doing are no longer her problem, she says. They chose their past long ago. He found his pack and she found hers. This is kind of an introduction into the divergent ways of Arlen and Tovolar. The next story, going into story 2, we kind of cut back and forth, present and past, between Arlen now and Arlen back when she first kind of was finding her ways as a werewolf. They are hunting again we find ourselves hunting again deeper and deeper into the forest. They're chasing another white stag with a simple message from Arlen: "Find witches." This is in the present. Eventually find themselves on the trail of this white stag. It seems impossibly exactly the same as the stag that she chased before. However, Arlen sees through the glamour and calls out to the humour behind the guys, Catilda, the lead witch of the Dawnheart Coven. Arlen has discovered her and the enclave of humans gathered beneath the Celestus, a great stone monument seemingly built like clockwork. Catilda talks of bringing about the Harvestide, a ritual to right the cycle of day and night and restore balance to Innistrad. All she needs is a moon silver key, the MacGuffin of this story, and we now have our objective for the story. But as Arlen and Catilda talk, a howl rings out through the night. Tovolar has returned for Arlen. And this kind of like ends the first story. We then get a story where it kind of, as I said before, it flashes back and forward between present Arlen and past Arlen, fleshing out Arlen's backstory with Tovolar, how he took her under his wing after her initial transformation, and her attempts at reasoning with this pack leader, who, as the rumours would have it, dabbles in dark magic, hunts without remorse or prejudice. So he's one of these people, he doesn't really mind if he's hunting vampires, he's hunting humans. The idea is that he owns the hunt. The hunt belongs to him and to the wolves, and the world is theirs to hunt at their own kind of, discretion, as it were. We see her battle with her instincts as a wolf and as someone who is still clinging to their humanity. His urge for openness, no more hiding, is in perfect conflict with Arlen's wish to do naught but hide in finding out, she's a werewolf. She doesn't want to have this side of her revealed to the villagers. She wants it to kind of be enclosed, and she just wants to run away from it, which is what she does. She runs away with Tovolar. The narrative bounces back and forth. fleshing out her switched in with showing her early days, switched in with her present resolve. This is the kind of important thing. Back when she was younger, she had such unsurety. She didn't know what she was doing with herself. She didn't know how to kind of balance her life. Whereas now she's kind of come to terms with it. She has like a decent hold on her wolf side, her human side, and kind of her resolve to defend Innistrad against even her own kind. He wants her to hunt. To take the night to their own. However, her resolve doesn't break, seeking a balance between the forces of the night and the humans, to the point of where even her own pack in the current day turns heel and joins Tovola to join the hunt and leave her behind. She has made her choice. I know, super heartbreaking moment. There's even a moment where I think one of the dogs, Patience, has a moment of like, but you're not coming. Like, you get some really lovely human kind of thought patterns and thought processes from the wolves. And there's a lot of like, she even says, like, they don't necessarily speak in the same way that humans do, but there is a communication, there is an understanding. And again, some of the bits are so heartbreaking. As Arlen returns to Catilda, she agrees to recover the key for her to bring about the harvest tide to try and reform some balance on the plane. However, she will need some help. So where does she go? Ravnica, obviously. Obviously, yeah. She recruits Teferi, Kaya, and Chandra. Back to Innistrad they go. The fetch quest, as I've put it, begins. As they head back to the Celestis, they find a Cathar, Adeline. As I've put, a Cathar of almost parodical stature. Like, she's almost a parody of what I've said is serious Gideon vibes.
Yeah,
like, she's super righteous. Even says somewhere in the story that she's almost a cliche of virtue. I think, like, she bashes down a door, and I think it's like Sharon or someone goes like, that couldn't be any more like out of a movie. I mean, obviously they don't say out of a movie, but like, it's almost like that she epitomizes that standard cliche white figure of virtue and authority. It's quite lovely. The five of them go to Thraben, which is still overrun with zombies. I said this a couple of weeks ago. There's a quote from Liliana where she basically raised all the dead and went, well, now it's your problem now. And obviously the zombies are just kind of still milling around. They kind of liken it to almost ants milling around an anthill. And I like the idea that it's almost like the zombies have kind of left as almost like a civilization. They kind of have almost like a normality to the way that they gather and act. Like, obviously they're not human, they're zombies and still, bad and everything. But it's kind of funny that they're in their inertness, they kind of go back to a normal kind of like humanistic civilization. They basically, the idea is they go there to try and find the House of Betzold, who were gifted the key decades or centuries ago. Warren Betzold, who's the bishop, who was a bishop to Arlen in her days in the church, is still performing his sermons to an audience of rot, as I've put it. Like, the idea is he's still up on this pulpit, still kind of, which sounds about basically the same as most sermons that I've heard anyway. But the idea is that Chandra blazes a trail through the dead. Arlen reaches the bishop, who then, when asked if the key can only manage one word, Dennick. This is his son. So they return to the Gavny township that Betzold called home and investigate the town. They find House Betzold overrun with Geist and Dennick residing within, who is also now passed. Without passage to the Blessed Sleep, he is still a Geist. So Arlen is able to talk to him. And all he can offer is another stepping stone to the group, saying that the key is now kept at Markov Manor, taken by Sorin. We see yet another dilapidated building in repair as they approach Markov Manor. They find it almost abandoned, this great crevice in the side of a random wall, like almost something's torn its way out of it. I wonder what that was. And the only person they can find is Sorin himself. He's in his like throne room, as it were. Typically, Sorin is super unhelpful. He's defeatist, exasperated at all he has sacrificed for the plane already. Quoting, "If my family so wishes to descend up into the worthless hedonism of eternal night, then I have done enough to stop them. Let them feast," which is pretty defeatist. Sorin then rounds on the group when they confront him and push him further, asking what they've done for the plane, pointedly demanding what Arlen has given to protect the plane. Arlen counters, but in her counter mentions Avacyn, bringing Sorin's ire, and Blade. He comes swinging at her, saying, "You are not permitted to mention her." Arlen defends herself, but as Sorin advances, a feather drops between them, heralding Sigarda's arrival, summoned by Arlen's faith in Innistrad. She confronts Sorin and gives them time to recover the key and escape. And as I've put, that is all we fucking see of the fight or aftermath thereof. There is nothing else mentioned about this. There is no Liza. There's no Cigar. That's an argument for a later date. Hopefully we're going to see it in Crimson Vow. But anyway, moving on. Apparently, there's no time to dwell. Episode 4 opens to Olivia, bathing in blood. face covered in the skin of a young maiden's face.
It's so
Her
gross.
beauty, I know, it's so extra. Her beauty time, however, is interrupted by Fua, a subordinate stitcher of hers who happens to have overheard Chandra and company speaking of the key as they travel back to the Celestis. Olivia now knows of the humans' intentions to bring her back the Harvest-Tide, and I'm sure that's the last we see of Olivia before next set, so there's no worries there. It doesn't matter. Let's go back to the Celestis. We return to the human enclave, now much bigger and more populist, with the message ringing through the people. Innistrad must endure. The ritual is begun at the centre of the Celestis, but as all seems well, as festivities seem at their climax, the wolves attack. Kaya takes the key to Catilda, while Chandra, Adeline and Arlen protect the people. Teferi lives up to his name and literally slows the sunset to give the humans as much time against the wolves before they change. The battle is brutal, and inevitably Arlen finds herself facing her mentor, the betrayer of her humanity, Tovola. And as she finally gives in to his taunts, to his invitation to violence, she shifts her form and attacks. The culmination of the narrative friction that we have seen throughout this story, Arlen living two lives, hits its climax. She defends the humans, defends Innistrad with all her might, and bests the pack leader. At the end, betraying his surety that she would always return home to him with one simple lie. I am home, from Arlen, is all it takes for him, providing an opening. All it takes for him to provide an opening for her. It is a lie, however. She does not mean that she is home with him. She means that she is home defending against him. She strikes but does not kill, forcing Tovola to agree to retreating, to leaving the humans to their ritual. And he does so. And Arlen returns to the centre of the Celestis to complete the ritual. The Moonsilver key in place, it requires blood from the Protector, from Arlen herself, ashes from a gnarled root as old as Innistrad itself, and the last piece, the soul of Catilda, temporarily given. But as the witch offers herself, a streak of red and gold barrels down from the sky, and before anyone can do anything, the limp body of Catilda is held in Olivia Valdarin's arms, floating above the ritual altar. A simple proposition, the witch for the key. The ritual successfully crashed, and with no choice, they have to agree. Arlen throws the key to Olivia as she drops Catilda's body to the ground. Arlen tries to catch her, but it's too late, and as quick as she came, the vampire is gone, the ritual in tatters, and the night seemingly here to stay.
Tune in next week for Crimson Vow.
Exactly, right? Like, it's such a... I mean, I'm going to bury the lead here by saying I really, really wish they hadn't put Olivia's Midnight Massacre on a card. I felt like that's the only thing that really kind of betrayed the story, because otherwise it would have... Because you genuinely had a culmination with the wolves and this whole big kind of fight. Like, there was, like, as I said, I've kind of skipped over the action bit a little bit there, but the whole of episode 4 is like the battle for Harvest Tides, and then the second half of the first half of episode 5 is kind of Arlen and Tovola specifically fighting against each other and her resolve and everything. So it's like a big bit of narrative story, and then it's almost like right at the end, kind of, again, we wouldn't have known it was coming without the card being printed. It kind of does steal the show a little bit, and it's supposed to, right? It's supposed to steal the show. It's a two-parter. This is Act 1 to Act 2 for Crimson Vow. But in general, like the story, as I've glossed over, has so much narrative depth, so many little conversations with random people. Like even at the beginning when Arlen's talking to Agatha, it sets such a great precedence for the rest of the set, and it sets some really good kind of foreshadowing for how, like, just how bleak and everything feels on a human level. And as much as we get all of these planeswalkers kind of doing these cool things, and we're bouncing around from these different towns, we do see the destruction and the wake of both everything leading up to Avacyn Restored, and then the aftermath with Eldritch Moon and Shadows over Innistrad. This kind of, like, everything in Innistrad is real bad, and all they're trying to do is trying to gather together and create some harmony and some balance, and they can't even do that. So it's a really damning story, but I mean, it does have some super heartfelt moments throughout it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Arlen Cord is obviously the center of, like, this narrative, like, in a big way, and it is nice to see that there are other characters around and they are doing their thing, and they do have these kind of moments of narrative relevance, but we do still focus on Arlen. And I think one of the big problems with planeswalkers in general is that oftentimes they're used as the kind of the viewer's eyes into the world that they don't quite understand, right? Because if they go to a new plane, like Kaya on Kaldheim, they use as the device of like, well, the audience doesn't know about Kaldheim, and neither does Kaya. So as Kaya learns about it, so do we, which is fine, and that's okay for some stories. But if you do that every single time, then it just becomes big exposition dumps like left, right, and center. So it's nice to have, especially on a plane that we already know. We don't need to like have like fleshed out world rules or anything. I mean, even if you're new to the game, like the information is all still there, and Innistrad is very popular, so you can kind of know what you need to know from that. So it is nice to have Arlen, who very much is in the story, almost literally the pure representation of Innistrad, just kind of going through their storyline. There was a really interesting thing that they did with Sorin, where obviously Sorin is generally seen as being like Mr. Innistrad, right? I mean, he calls himself the Lord of Innistrad, right? And the fact that he made Avacyn, the fact that he turned against his people to protect like the non-vampire races on the plane, like not protect them, but to like seemingly to kind of side with them over the vampires because the vampires are running riot, and all of his kind of actions have kind of put him in a position of being like, no, I'm the true protector of Innistrad. I'm the one who kind of gets to call himself the Lord of Innistrad. But since he had to destroy Avacyn, and his kind of faith in the plane and faith in everyone else is kind of, as you say, has gone all defeatist, it's really cool to see Arlen sort of taking up the mantle and being a creature of all worlds, a creature of the church and the wolves and the humans,
She understands the need for both, right? Like she
Yeah,
understands
yeah.
the need for balance.
Yeah, 100%.
Because that's all she tries to argue with Tovalo. Is all she wants to argue is that it even starts in episode 2 when she's in her youth of being like, but why do we have to hunt the humans? Like you can hunt other things. We can have this. We can both live in harmony without the fear. Like there's enough things attacking. There's enough. There's enough things like demons and devils and ghouls and horrors and stuff that you don't need the more like human races like the vampires and the werewolves to have the hedonistic approach, because they've still got human qualities, right? They should still be able to be reasoned with. There should still be some balance and equality, which obviously vampires Sorin tried to help with that and has failed. And then it's funny that Arlen has tried to do the same thing with the wolves and succeeded by leaning into her own kind of wolf tendencies, being able to fight back against Tovolar, be a little bit more brutal. I think like the way she ends up taking the way she ends up beating is by shoving a branch through his leg. That's the only thing. And again, she has almost like lie. It's almost like his reliance, or his, I guess, his hubris, right? Is that the idea is that he believed so wholeheartedly that she would follow the call to the hunt that she didn't believe for a second. He didn't believe for a second that she could turn against him, right? Or even lie. And that was the biggest thing, right? She almost had to like lie to him, because there is still a truth in her wanting to be a wolf, in wanting to be a part of the pack. She had to turn away from her own pack, had to turn away into the humans. It's like it's such a cool decision point, right? I guess Sorin didn't ever have to make that decision. He was always he almost took upon himself of being like, I am the head of the vampires and I will control them myself, kind of thing, right? Or I will create this remedy. I'll create this stopgap in Avacyn that will stop my people because I just simply can't control them. Whereas Arlen didn't have that kind of power. She didn't have like old Walker status to be able to build a construct. Like Avacyn Angel of Hope is a ridiculously beefy creature, and Sorin just made her, just fucking created her. Whereas Arlen has to kind of rely on so much more, has to rely on her Innistradiness way more than say her old Walker kind of status and power, which is really good to see.
Yeah. There are so many decent individual lines in these stories as well that really sort of sell the sort of drama of the situation. Almost if you're listening to this, go back and read every single like last paragraph of each one of these episodes, because like the writing in it is so it's so good. Like every single episode just ends on such a big note. And then you also get like these individual lines, like the moment where Arlen and Tovolar kind of have their last little like sort of bait and switch, like with Arlen sort of, quote unquote lying to him about wanting to be home. I mean, I actually really don't think it is a lie. I know Arlen in the story, Arlen in the story questions whether it's underhanded or not, but actually I think it's very sort of sincere. And the line, the woods are home, the wolves are home, the church is home, all of it is. It's like, oh man, this is the writing that we really need for these stories. Like it's so good. Yeah, really, really cool.
Gives you the willies, right? Gives you the little shivers where you could, because that's the thing, right? You want writing like this of where it follows a person's like internal narrative so well that you kind of fall into pace with it. So then when you have these big sweeping statements or these big like kind of culminations, it's kind of the same way that I've written in the past. Right, I love having an amazing opening and fuck the middle cool, whatever, and then you close on something that's really quipped, and it kind of just delivers everything with a little flourish. And if you're along for the ride, that little flourish at the end, it just lands so much harder. It has so much more gravitas because you're like, oh yeah, she's come to this conclusion, and oh, I believe it with her, and it's really nice to see.
Really, really cool. Let's talk a little bit about Tovalar as a villain. Now, I really liked it. I really liked him. I really liked him as a villain. I really liked what they were doing with him, because at no point in any of the stories is anyone necessarily saying like, "Oh, werewolves are just inherently evil." And
No.
like at all points in the story, even with Arlen questioning everything, even with the dire wolves, this kind of like almost like new uber breed of werewolf has kind of come to join Tovalar and the rest of the Moondronen. They're trying to do, at least from their perspective, is just to live their best werewolf life, right? Like to give themselves over to the hunt, and that's all that Arlen wants to do as well. But Arlen's kind of, Planeswalker status, giving her more of a sort of human detachment, yeah, even when in like wolf form, like kind of stops her from quite investing in it quite as much. But even in the flashbacks with Arlen being under the mentorship of Tovalar, he's always painted as quite a sympathetic and sincere figure to Arlen. Like there are several times where the other wolves say that Arlen's still his favorite, and that he still cares about her, and all he wants is for her to come home, and that they want her there. Even her own pack, we are very like made to feel very sympathetic for, very quickly, who are not violent and don't kill like indiscriminately. Even they're like, well, hang on, what? Like, we're wolves. What are we doing? Why are we not like joining this big hunt with everyone else? And I think it's an interesting one, because it's not a new sort of narrative device with villains to say that they're villains and victims essentially of just their own existence. Like he's not got some grand design for like manipulation or malice. He is just trying to make sure that his people are living the way that his people need to live. And unfortunately on Innistrad, that just means that it comes into odds with everyone else. I wonder, because there's a big thing obviously about Emrakul, the Eldrazi Titan, is still trapped in Innistrad's moon. About Innistrad's sun, Innistrad's moon. They don't make too much of it in these stories.
I think they deliberately tried to ground things back. I think it'd be weird to come back and still have it being... I mean, I don't know if any people really... It is strange. Actually, the more I think about it, it is strange. Like, it was a giant spaghetti monster that sits upon the horizon that got sucked into the moon, and everyone just seems to be like, oh, yeah, the travails were hard, weren't they? Yeah, lots of death and stuff. And yeah, it skirts it massively.
Yeah, I wonder if in Crimson Vow there'll be some sort of reference to it, which is why, like, A, why the day-night cycle is kind of put off kilter, and B, why maybe the werewolves are just so willing just to be, murderous. And because, like, I say they're not like painted as like massive villains. They absolutely are the villains of this story, especially like the dire wolves are. And there's Lion Smiling in the last two stories where she talks about how she can't look over the fact that they've basically come to this harvest festival and slaughtered a bunch of children. So there is obviously that, mea culpa, like, it's they still slaughtered and killed like innocent people, essentially, who all they wanted to do, all the humans want to do, is to survive as well. But I wonder if we will get some sort of reference to that, because it is a thing, and I'd be very surprised if there isn't some sort of intent to have, all of the creatures affected by the moon be affected in a weird way because of the giant spaghetti monster that's trapped in the moon,
Yeah, I think there's points in the story where clearly, like, the direwolves this isn't something that they've lent into. It mentions this idea that Tovalar dabbles in dark magic, but I think that's kind of mostly to insinuate more insidiousness to him than there actually is. I think the whole point is it's natural instinct, right? There's a drive. It even shows from Arlen's point of view sometimes where, like, the wolf just kind of takes over. It's not an active decision. It's just instinct. It's just nature. And I feel like maybe because they're so influenced by the moon, having an Eldrazi within it is pushing them. It's physically making them. I mean, this is Emrakul's the Titan of Change, right? That's the whole point, that she transforms things, and I like this idea that the effect that it has on their lycanthropy is exacerbated by Emrakul's influence. That it does make them more hungry, it makes them more bold, it drives their urges more, and they are victims of that. As much as they could try to fight against it, it takes Arlen a huge amount of resolve to be able to do so. Whereas the average, werewolf, I don't think will have that same fortitude. I don't think they'll have the ability to be able to hold back, especially when you've got someone like Tovalar leading you, when you've got that, as you say, like pack instinct kind of going. So yeah, I think they're as much victims to the lycanthropy they're increased victims to lycanthropy because they're just getting carried away with what their natural instincts are telling them. It's just I don't think it's an active choice in the same way with the vampires, of where they could choose, right, to be they're choosing to give into it, whereas I don't know if I mean, there are similar parallels, right? They both have kind of this idea of you could be in control of what you're doing, but you kind of choose to let it go. But I feel like with the vampires, it's less a change that happens within a cycle of day or night. It's more just something you have to kind of agree to and like sit with yourself. Like Soren's done a very good job of it, and I feel like even Olivia, she could be civil, right? She doesn't seem like she's a crazy mad woman all the time. Like, you could have some civility or a line of moderation. I feel like it's much harder to be moderate when your actual curse forces you to be more aggressive.
Yeah, the vampires are a society which has a lot of facades and sort of airs and graces that they try to hold up, whereas the werewolves are the exact opposite of that. They're trying to strip down any sense of trying to be not what you truly are. We do see a little bit of how vampires kind of view their own monstrousness in the very first episode, with the opening, with the vampire Klaus. Obviously, this is more of a device to kind of show off how the werewolves are now starting to get more of an upper hand, because obviously Klaus the vampire is there thinking he's about to tear apart a bunch of humans, and then the humans are just like, no, lol, and
literally
turn into werewolves and then beat the crap out of him, as they do. But it's Klaus talks about being a Falkenrath, which is one of the main vampire houses, and how Falkenraths are like sort of better than other vampires at just kind of acknowledging their sort of ferociousness,
bestial, right?
Yeah. Which was a kind of an interesting choice to have a Falkenrath vampire be the kind of voice of the first story. I guess it's a foreshadow, isn't it? Like an immediate foreshadow to be like, oh, creatures of the night need to be creatures of the night. Haha, look at me, I'm a cool vampire. Oh no, there's a bunch of werewolves that are about to rip me apart. Really cool opening as well, like complete bait and switch. I got completely suckered in because I was reading it, and for like 2 or 3 minutes I was like, I swear this is the werewolf set, right? Why is this vampire knocking around?
I really wish they hadn't mentioned the Falkenrath in the first bit, because you could have felt, as you're reading it, looking through, being like, okay, this is a werewolf, because he talks about how like the fangs elongate and the talons elongate, and it always had this kind of feeling of like, oh, is this the werewolf? Because if you skip over that first initial paragraph and just go straight into the second, you could read it as he is the werewolf, right, and he's attacking the humans. Then before you know it, it's like, oh no, he's the vampire and he's being attacked by the werewolves. But yeah, exactly. I think that's the whole point, right? The idea of it felt like, oh, we're following the vampires again. It's like, no. This story and this set is all about the wolves. And as the line states, as I put at the top, the night belongs to those who take it. And again, that kind of epitomizes the story for the set, right? Of it's about taking, it's about owning. Like, the humans can't. It's the only one thing they can't do is take back the night, whereas all of these other races are trying to take it from them. It puts them in a very commanding status. It's just a shame that they got usurped right at the end again by the vampires. I know it's like a book ending, right? Where it starts with a vampire, ends with a vampire, but it did feel like, the wolves were going to dominate and should have dominated. I mean, I'm glad that Arlen had her moment. I kind of feel like it should have been something else that battered the wolves back. I don't know, maybe. I mean, again, it's just a shame that we didn't see Sigarda in a more active role. Probably going to come in Crimson Vow.
Yeah, potentially. Cool to see Sigarda, though.
Oh, really cool to see Sigarda, especially when she turns around. She does the whole, like, the Dumbledore thing of where help will always come to those who ask for it at Hogwarts. This kind of idea of like, you had faith in me, Arlen, that's why I came. And I'm like, that's Innistrad literally answering back to Arlen's coolest protector, right?
Mm.
That's so cool, and I just love the way she turns around. And what's the line she says is like, "Oh, you crawled your way out of a rock just to sulk." To sulk, I'm like, "Oh, bitch, you got burned." Oh, and then all you hear is from the point of view of the planeswalkers is grunting and screaming from behind. It's like, fuck off! I don't care about them picking up the moon silver key. Let's show me the battle between an angel and a vampire. That's way more interesting. Hopefully, we'll get some because I think we're gonna. There's a story spotlight card, right, of Sorin finding out that the crypt's empty. That Edgar's no longer in there. So I reckon we will come back to it. I mean, I just really hope he hasn't just offed Sigarda, and now it's just like Liesa left. Like, that would be so sorry to be like, well, one less angel to go. Because he even, like, in the story, you don't really see it, but he's beheaded the statue that holds the Moon Silver Key, which is the statue of Avacyn. It's almost like he's completely... I mean, it's a little bit sad for me to see sometimes, because we want Sorin to be better. I don't know, this is me personally, I don't know. When he was first introduced, he seems like he was going to be like this all, like... kind of like high and mighty, all-knowing mentor kind of figure, and he's just turned into like this petty child where like everything's just gone wrong. And I get that he's going to be belligerent about it, but I just want more. I want better from him. I don't want him to be petty and a sore loser and catty and back chatty. I want him to kind of like, you know, take ownership and control. I don't see a way back for his character now, you know? Like, I see him as he is now. I'm like, you just haven't learned any of your lessons after all these millennia. You're still stuck being stubborn and stroppy. Like, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about Sorin, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't like him anymore. I used to really like him, and now I'm like, whatever. Give me someone better.
It is maybe how a lot of people have perceived Sorin so far anyway. Like, I kind of feel like he's always been sort of seen as being the petulant edgelord, like, man-child. And now this just kind of, fully proves it. But it's nice. I'll tell you what it was nice to have that much of him in this story without it being about him completely. Because yes, he will probably come back in Crimson Vow. But we sort of see him after the Shadows over Innistrad story that's not from those bloody War of the Spark books, right?
Yeah.
So it was nice to actually sort of see where he's at. And also, kind of nice to see him again without Nahiri being in tow. Like, I'm kind of happy that storyline isn't just all Sorin is now, is just him and Nahiri, like, battling it out.
Having a feud, exactly,
Yeah. So
I think individually they're much more interesting characters to be divergent from each other's kind of messes.
Sure. Well, they can do their own thing. And we've seen Nahiri do her own thing in the Zendikar storyline now. So it's nice to sort of see Sorin doing it. And nice to see that he's not brooding because of Nahiri, he's brooding because of Avacyn. Like, that is a big deal, right? That he had to destroy Avacyn, which was essentially his...
Kill his daughter.
Essentially.
It's so sad.
Yeah. And then have Sigarda knocking through his roof being like, let's talk about Avacyn now that she's gone and she can't, like, you know, keep us under her thumb.
Yeah. Also, there's this... Also, you know, the sister, you know, that she slapped about that he didn't do anything about. Yeah, she's back. She's got some words for you as well. I mean, that's the conversation that I'd like to see. That I hope we get next story or next set. I hope we get a little story block of that. I really like that episode in general, right? Because that was the fetch quest episode, as I call it. Like, it was the one that was less focused on Arlene and her coming to terms with her wolfhood, as it were, and it was less focused on, like, say, the humans. It was more like a little drive-by of how Innistrad is now. You know, right? They go to Gavany, we see it over on with zombies. Chandra and Adeline get their time to shine, like fighting back all the zombies. Then they go to the Gavany where the Betswolds are, which is where Kaya gets to kind of flex her Geist killing powers. I guess what I like is that all of the Planeswalkers within the story had their moment to shine in a way that felt organic, but also felt like, okay, let's go and fetch all the people that can fix all the individual problems without having to come up with other MacGuffins. Like, we've already got Planeswalkers as MacGuffins, right? We've got so many of them now that, okay, if you need this happening, we've got this person, and if you've got this happening, we've got this person. You need to talk to dragons? Oh, there's Sarkhan over there. We've got MacGuffins everywhere. And it's kind of nice for them to be used in a way that didn't feel too forced. It felt like each of them had their kind of time to shine without overbearing the story, which I think is really, really nice. I felt like a little rushed, that one particular episode, but again, when you're doing a fetch quest between like 6 different places, like how do you avoid that, you know? Especially when all of the other episodes were quite slow in terms of like how much stuff and how much time passed and what they were doing within the story, with how much like was given to it to talk about. As I said, there was a lot of like sit down conversations between like Catilda and Arlen, between Agatha and Arlen, lots of little things that ground the story, whereas this was obviously a bit more of a I guess we should see some other parts of Innistrad while we're here kind of thing. Yeah. again, just nice to have planeswalkers involved without taking over the entire story.
Yes, for sure. I did sort of feel like that they got to just be there and do their thing without necessarily being the absolute focus point of everything. Interesting to see Kaya, Teferi, and Chandra kind of being the Gatewatch combination at this point. Because obviously for so long it was the five, it was Nissa, Gideon, Jace, Chandra, and Liliana. So it's kind of nice to see these different sort of like team ups, if you like. I still don't know how I feel about this idea that they've got like this clubhouse on Ravnica that they all just kind of hang out at.
No, I think that's really cute. I think that's really
Cheesy
kitsch. I mean, yeah, but it's got to be like there was like the Infinite Consortium right on Esper with Tezzeret. I feel like after War of the Spark, it's inevitable of where they're going to have to fill, and also the Gatewatch is still a thing, right? They still need to have some headquarters, Meanwhile, back at Gatewatch HQ, like I feel like it has to have that Saturday morning kind of vibe, right? Of where Arlen walks in and Chandra's just sat in front of the fire, like there's Teferi just flicking through a book, and it's like, oh, who's on the roster this week? I think that's fine. Again,
Okay.
like they're Planeswalker MacGuffins, right? They kind of have to. Like, what's the alternative of where you have to do a send the beacon, fetch the warriors? I don't really know how else you can do it.
I guess. I just sort of feel like, don't all these people have like homes to go to?
Well, Teferi, no, because Elf is not a thing anymore. Kaya, I guess, is bounty duty. Well, she can't go back to her plane either, right? Because I forgot what it's called now. Where's Kaya from? That place with the colours in the sky that Bonis fucked up. Good, can't remember off the top of my head. Great flavour. But yeah, I mean, she can't really go home either. And then I think Chandra just wants to be part of the club and be part of the cool team. I feel like she's just like
Chandra's from Kaladesh.
Yeah, it's like, hey guys, what's... Yeah, but she wants to be like, hey guys, what are we doing this week? Did you want to hang out after... My mum says you can come over for tea. We've got fish fingers. Yeah, it feels like that kind of thing. Which I think plays to her character, right? She's the only one who's kind of like young. Like, we don't get a proper timestamp on Kaya, but she feels a bit more adult. I guess that happens when you see your entire plane collapse, right? Also, it's quite nice to see Chandra's bisexuality kind of played into a little bit more. With her fawning all over Adeline, which I thought was quite cute. I like that a lot. I think that was well played into. It's kind of funny that they've kind of fused the beefiness of Gideon with the intentions of Nissa, and they've gone, oh, we could put that together in one story, right? Like, we could just fuse those two intentions together, and I think it worked. They're going to have to go a long way to fix that issue, but I feel like that's a step in the right direction for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I really enjoyed reading these stories. I also didn't feel like they were overstuffed either, despite the fact that they did cover a lot of ground. Reading them definitely felt like we got enough character as well as sort of plot. The only thing I think I wish was fleshed out more, if it was possible, is the Dawnheart Coven.
Yeah, I do agree. I feel like there was the episode where we flashed back and forth between Arlen was really, really important, but one, I felt like it was a bit disjointed. To do flash back and flash forward each other paragraphs quite a lot, and I feel like they could have maybe put some of that in with the Harvest-Tide battle, or like the bit where we see Arlen fighting Tova. I feel like that could have combined together more, and we could have had less Arlen talking to Agatha right at the beginning. We could have seen her get to the Coven a little bit earlier and maybe settle into it a bit more. Or when we go back after we found the Moonsilver Key, we could have settled into it a little bit more as well. There was bits and pieces, right? You got that feeling, you got the idea of what was going on there and the intention. But yeah, again, we didn't quite get to dig into it too much, especially since I think next set we're not going to see the humans as much, right? I mean, this is the wolf-led set, and we did get a lot of specifically Arlen, but yeah, it would have been nice to flesh out a little bit more, especially since now I think Catilda's dead. I'm not gonna lie, I think she's dead. I think the human encampment's in tatters. The ritual didn't go very well. It's like, well, it would have been nice to see it before it all went to shit a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I would have absolutely completed the ritual rather than saved Catilda.
Yeah, what the fuck were they thinking? What were they thinking? Madness. Ugh. I mean, I know plot has to happen and stuff, but at that point, you're like, don't give the key back. She's her soul's already left her. But I guess there was a line, right, of where the other witches said they couldn't do it without Catilda. So I do understand. It was just one of these things of where, like you're watching those films and like you can tell that the opposite of Deus Ex Machina, of where that something's going to stop it, of where they're doing that delay thing, of where they're talking too long, they're taking their time, and something stops them right at the end. It's like, come on, things don't happen like that in real life. Like the fact that Olivia just arrived by herself without any just nothing whatsoever. I mean, to be fair, we did see her in her point of view say. She was talking to Führer, right, and saying like, "Oh, what would you do if you found people like trying to interrupt your craft?" And he was like, "Well, I'd kill them." And she goes, "Well, would you kill them straight away?" And he goes, "Yes, straight away. It's damn those people." And Olivia's like, "No, darling. You wait until they do all of the work for you."
Yeah.
It's like, oh, she's so cool. I hate that I love her so much. Like, it's annoying that all this story does is for me, because I don't get me wrong, I really like Tova, I really like Arlen. I like the combination of their story, but I feel like I don't know enough about Olivia. And I want to see more. And I love this idea of where she's just kind of sitting around prepping herself up for a wedding. She goes, "Oh, Tuesday? Yeah, I think I can fit in. Yeah, I can fit in disrupting a ritual into my I can fit that into my week. That's fine. Yeah, I've got time for that." It's also really fucking annoying that the only reason they found out is because Chandra was blabbing her mouth off too loud about finding the Moonsilver Key. And had she just kept her mouth shut, then Führer would have never known, would have never been able to tell Olivia, and then Olivia never would have been able to interrupt the festival. It's just so frustrating. Can the good guys not just win a little bit for once?
Well,
I mean,
no.
not in
As you say, this is the
Innistrad.
first of a two-parter, right?
Exactly.
I can't wait to see how they sort of stitch the stories together. I wonder if they will. It is Innistrad. Maybe they will just leave it kind of bleak.
Well, because I think I don't know if I'm pretty sure. Okay, predictive wise, I'm pretty sure we've seen the last of Tovan. Obviously, he's injured, he's hurt. He's not gone, he's not dead, which is good because it allows us to have like a longer lasting, not villain necessarily, but antagonist. Right? He can continue to be like, again, they just wanted a longer night because it made their lives better and easier. That doesn't necessarily mean I think they'll come back with a gusto after being like, "Oh, we were thwarted. Now we shall thwart you back." I feel like he's been dutifully kind of like browbeaten. That I feel like he's like, okay, now we'll just go back and be normal wolves, fine, whatever. I do worry about because the line at the end. Let me bring up the line at the end of the whole whole 5-parter because it's so galling. Because it just makes everything feel like had they not started the ritual, things wouldn't have been. I feel like now they started the ritual, weren't able to complete it. Things are worse. Right, I feel that's the whole point Olivia wanted. She was like, let them do the work for you. Is let them get to the point of where the ritual's just about to be finished, and just before they go, and let's balance it, they interrupt it, so now it's in like utter unbalance. It's completely flip-sided. But the last line is, by the time the world stops spinning, the vampire is gone, flown away from the looks of it, a distant speck in the black against the already dark sky. The key is gone with her, the Celestis has gone silent. It is night on Innistrad. It will be night here. It'll be night from here to eternity.
Ooh.
It's so spooky. And I like this idea of now the eternal nights come in. Now the vampires can have their fucking big ass party wedding kind of thing. So, yeah. I mean, again, this is end of the first part. I don't think we'll see the werewolves come back to fight with the humans against. I think what we'll likely see is a resurgence of both walkers and angels. And then we still haven't heard anything of Thalia, anything of Odric, anything of Saint Traft. I think that's very fucking deliberate. I don't think the Dawn Hut Coven are the only humans left on Innistrad. I think those are the more like homely, trying to come back to something more ritualistic, whereas they still have a last bastion of Cathars and Knights and Holy Warriors, but we didn't want to cross those too much. Adeline was enough, right, to inject into this side of the story that I think they'll backface all of it into the Crimson Vow. I think that's probably how they'll go with it.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. I mean, I know we haven't actually been recording for that long, but I kind of feel like we said everything that we needed to say about this story. I was really happy to be back on Innistrad. I was really happy to sort of get to be in this world again and to have a much smaller story, really. Like, because although the implications of it are quite big, with it being like day-night cycle on the entire plane, last time we were in Innistrad, and we had like a big battle scene or several, it was for the like fate of its like metaphysical existence in the multiverse. You had a Eldrazi Titan messing things up.
We know what happens when Eldrazi are left to their own devices, so it did feel super tense. Like when
it was big, right?
Yeah, whereas and the trailer as well, right? When she had all of the zombies fighting, it felt it was the end of the world.
Yeah, whereas this isn't the end of the world. Like it might be like the day night. Obviously, the day night cycle is important and all that kind of thing, but really at its core, it's a story about one person's struggle to know where their home is, even well into their life, they're 45, 50 years old, and even then they still don't quite know who they are, which is, I think something a lot of people can relate to. And it's, the battle is a battle between one group of humans at a festival and one group of werewolves. As horrifying as that is, that's something that happens on Innistrad every day. It just so happens that this particular one had all the big players involved in it. And I really liked that. I thought it didn't feel any less tense or any less kind of like important to the characters that you were reading about, and that made you invested in it. It was just nice to have a break from like, oh, plane destroyed, and I don't even think we've had those stories really like recently. Like a lot of the stories that are being told, I mean, the Doomscar and Kaldheim, but that's kind of what Kaldheim, like the kind of Ragnarok allegory, is all about.
Yeah.
But they have kind of peeled back from doing these like big destructo stories quite so often. But I think because we had so much of it in such a like concentrated dose during the Bolas arc, I think even now you sort of have to be careful of doing these big like plane-wide destruction stories, which is nice that they're not doing it. And
it's kind of hard to build a story without that kind of conflict, right? And as you say, if you look about it in a bubble, there's a bunch of humans trying to create a ritual. Because of the gathering of the humans, naturally the wolves came to fight them because it's their territory. And then the rest of Innistrad, technically, even though it would be affected by the ritual, is unaffected otherwise. It's not like this sweat. Again, we did a drive-by episode touching on different other towns and stuff, but the conflict wasn't huge. It was very isolated, right? It was between a specific few players, which, I guess makes it feel more... It makes it feel more visceral because you can kind of ingrain yourself in it more. It's very hard to relate to a giant spaghetti monster on the horizon with 1,000 zombies attacking it. It doesn't necessarily play as well or is easy to imagine, whereas a lot of these conflicts felt very much more, they hit closer to home, even like the Olivia bit, like it's one person coming in and fighting one person, and it's quite nice to see that isolation. I think they'll probably continue that into Crimson Vow. It seems like the personalities are going to be really, really important rather than the conflicts themselves. It's the personalities involved that kind of lead it, which I think is probably where we suffered before, of where they tried to either have too many personalities involved or the personalities didn't really matter. It's a megalomaniacal fucking dragon. Who cares? Or it doesn't have that kind of I'd say that grounding that you can kind of get into. And again, maybe this has something to do with the story style and the writing style, because again, the writing style did a really good job of painting these characters as super relatable, giving you enough of their insight. And I know some people mention like the tone, or not the tone, the form of writing, like being either being first person, kind of they found jarring. I'm like, well, once you sink into it, I find it more relatable because you're speaking from yourself into the story. Whereas if you have like they did this and they did that, there's a sense of detachment. So I think it was really clever and sensible way to do it, especially when it's supposed to feel like, we're humans. Like if we lived on Innistrad, this is the kind of thing that we'd be issuing. We don't know how to relate to vampires and werewolves. All we know how to relate to is being squishy man things that get killed easily by everything. And night is spooky. No more spooky. More sun, please. That's much more relatable. So yeah, very good.
Cool. Well, I think that would do it for the Midnight Hunt story review. I can't wait for Crimson Vow. I'm not even that into vampires these days, but I think it's going to be absolutely it's going to be so much fun. It's going to be really nice and campy. It's going to be great. All right, guys. Well, tell us what you think about the Midnight Hunt storyline. I'm just about feeling human again after an hour of recording. I'm getting there. Hit us up on Twitter at mtflavouring. Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. My personal Twitter is at AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is
at the Fox in the Moon.
And Nathan, do you have any final thoughts? I know you've been doing a lot of talking.
Only one, and that's, if anyone out there has been in that position where they know of a certain card that's in their collection and then you start theory crafting around it and you're like, and it keeps like going off into different tangents and you're like, oh my God, yes, amazing. You go to build the deck and you can't fucking find that one card. So you have to go online and then buy another one, even though next week you're going to find it. Welcome to the hell that I've been in the last 24 hours. That's it. My last little personal rant. Don't worry, I'm there with you. Just you bite the bullet, okay? Bite the bullet and buy the card, because it's not worth spending hours and hours riffling through the same cards knowing it's not there. I will find it. Honestly, I'll find it next week, and so that'll be my rant next week, that I'd have found the card. I think bought another one, but God, it's
wait,
annoying.
Is Magic the Gathering a card game?
Yeah, right. Crazy. I know. There's like pieces and attacking and stats and stuff. And yeah, I know.
I thought it was
weird.
just a collection of stories with like.
Yeah, it's just a narrative device. I mean, I think the cards are mostly there to help carry the narrative.
Oh,
they're mostly collector's pieces. I don't think there's much of a game involved in it, to be fair.
Well, can you get like a sticker book?
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit more sticker book. Amazing. Oh god, love it.
Awesome. Well, all that remains for me to say is thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.